Hi, this is Bob Serling, and I'd like to welcome you to 7 ways to turn the assets you already have into six-figure profit centers, and how to do this with no cost and no risk. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we dive into the demonstration. First, I tend to talk pretty fast because there's a ton of material to cover here. So what I've done is you'll notice on the video that the slider is available. You can stop the video, you can go back and review stuff, you can go forward, you can view it any way you want. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't stand it when you get one of those videos and there's no controls available and you have to watch the whole thing all the way through. Here, what I want to do is let you learn rather than force you to watch at my pace. So you're going to be able to move the slider any way you want. Secondly, as I said, there's a lot of material. It's all content. So I strongly advise that you turn off anything that you have streaming. Turn off your phone, turn off Facebook, YouTube, and anything else that might distract you, because there's a ton of valuable information here that you can start implementing as soon as this video is over to really improve the sales of your business. So with that said, I'm going to turn off the camera so it isn't a distraction, and we'll jump right into the presentation. 12 or 13 years ago, I got an email from a guy that said, "Hey Bob, I used one of your licensing strategies and I put together a licensing deal, and it took 6 weeks and I worked my butt off with it. I worked like 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for the 6 weeks. But at the end, it was really worth it because I took in $1.3 million using just one of your licensing strategies. And of that, I kept $875,000. So I don't have the email anymore because it was many years ago. I can't quite remember the guy's name. I do have a picture of him though, and you might recognize him. Anyone know who that is? Well, I'm kidding, of course, because that's Roland Frazier. And obviously this occurred years and years ago, before Roland was well known, and certainly well before he was part of Digital Marketer. So the way Roland did this was by, as I said, using one Tollgate licensing strategy. And I'm going to demonstrate 7 different ways to use Tollgates to turn the assets you already have into six-figure profit centers. Now, it's actually easy to do, and by the end of this demonstration, you'll have a number of ideas you can start implementing right away. So the first question is, why licensing? What does licensing do for your business? Well, licensing is a fast, easy way to fully capitalize on the assets you already have. You see, you've invested a tremendous amount of time and money creating these assets, but the fact is you're not fully capitalizing on them. And some of these assets include your current products and services, older products and services you don't sell anymore, your email list, your knowledge of your industry, your relationship with your customers, your relationship with your vendors, and your relationships with other businesses, and your intellectual property. And that includes your business systems, your marketing processes, sales processes, accounting systems, information technology systems, and any other systems or processes that you've created to improve the operation of your business. That's all licensable intellectual property. So, what happens when you put licensing into practice in your business? Well, the main thing is that it totally levels out your cash flow. So you have a consistent, steady stream of cash flow every month, even in months that are normally slow periods for you. What this means then is that you'll start each month knowing that you aren't going to get any financial surprises, and that you have a steady, consistent stream of revenue that smooths out any gaps you might encounter. And being able to quickly turn the assets you already have into six-figure profit centers solves a world of problems. First, obviously your business will be substantially more profitable. Number 2, you won't have to worry about making payroll during the slow season because you won't have slow seasons anymore. And you'll never be stuck again not being able to make your quarterly tax payments because your cash flow is steady and consistent. And finally, you'll have the peace of mind that comes from knowing with absolute certainty that you have a steady, reliable stream of profits coming in every month. So with this in mind, let's dig in then, and I'll demonstrate 7 ways to turn the assets you already have into 6-figure profit centers with no cost and no risk. I want to start with 4 core principles that set the foundation for everything we'll talk about today. So core principle number 1 is every business has assets they aren't fully capitalizing on. I just showed you a long list of those assets, and I'm sure you recognize the number of them that you could be making more sales of. Core principle number 2 is the way you capitalize on those assets is by using Tollgate licensing strategies, and I'll explain what those are in just a minute. And core principle number 3 is because you're leveraging assets you already have, there's no cost and no risk to do this. You've already invested all the time and money to develop them. And principle number 4 is when you leverage your assets properly, you have much higher profit margins, often as high as 95%. And you'll see real examples of other businesses operating at a 95% profit margin by using these strategies as we go through the demonstration. So with these 4 principles in mind, let me clear up something that sounds a bit mysterious at first, but it really isn't. And that is, what the heck is a Tollgate licensing strategy? A Tollgate is really a 3-part deal. So, and they're actually really easy. You use them every day and you just aren't aware of it. So on the left side, the first part in the deal is the host, and that's a company who has a product or service they want to sell. On the right side are guests. Those are customers who want to buy that product or service. And then in the middle is the Tollgate, and that's the facilitator or connector who puts the host and the guest together. So for example, iTunes is a Tollgate. Now on the host side with iTunes, you've got the companies that create the music, podcasts, and other streaming content. And on the right side, you've got the guests. Those are people like you and me who want to listen to that music or podcast or view streaming content. And in the middle is iTunes. They're the connector or facilitator who puts the hosts and guests together, and they then collect a fee for every connection they make. Every time you download some music or a podcast that you pay for, iTunes gets a share of that. So that's how they work, and they're really easy. Now, I think we've got all the necessary background covered with that, so let's dig in now and take a look at all 7 of the Tollgate licensing strategies. And keep in mind that any of these 7 strategies can quickly create a new 6-figure profit center for your business. But at the same time, you'll only want to pick a couple of them to implement, because if you try to implement too many of these strategies at once, your focus will be fragmented and there'll be too many different things to juggle. So, Tollgate licensing strategy number 1 is called Small Services Broker. And brokering small services is one of the easiest ways to quickly create a 6-figure profit center for any business. And here's how it works. Regardless of whether you sell products or services, there are always related services that your customers want that you don't offer. So you act as the Tollgate or the connector to pair your customers with quality providers of those services. So let me give you an example of how that works. I have a client whose main service is SEO services, and that's search engine optimization. Now, because of that, he gets requests for all kinds of other services that he doesn't offer, things like web design, graphic design, Facebook marketing, email marketing, LinkedIn, and just all kinds of marketing related things. So one day he got a call from a client who said, hey, I'm having this little 4-page website designed, and I put together a spec and I got a bid for it, and I'd like you to review it. Do you have a couple minutes? So my client said, sure. And he took a look at it. He got back to his client and he said, hey, your spec looks great. The company's design work looks excellent too, but their price is really high. I think $6,000 is too much for a 4-page website. I'll do the job for $2,000. So his client immediately accepted it. Then my client went out to some of the freelance sites, things like Upstart uh, and Odesk or Guru.com, and he started looking at the portfolios of freelance web designers. He found a few he liked, and he put the job up for bid. Well, within an hour, he had a number of bids, and one of the designers he really liked bid $500 for the job. So he immediately accepted. He then jumped on a call on the phone with the freelancer and his client, reviewed the spec, put them together. Everybody agreed the spec was right, and that was it. That was like a little 10-minute call. 2 days later, the job was delivered. My client looked at it, thought it looked great, sent it over to his client who approved it. Boom, it was over. Now, remember, my client bid $2,000 to do the job, and he paid the freelancer $500. So he made $1,500 for the job. But here's the thing. He had less than I think 2 hours into it, just a little bit of time to research the freelancer, then connect with them, then have the call to go over the specs and then review it. So for those 2 hours, he ended up making $750 an hour. But it gets even better, because what he could now do is take a couple of his employees and show them exactly what he did, which is simple, and then email his list and say, hey, if you need web design services or Facebook marketing or help with your LinkedIn profile, we now offer those services. Just get in touch with us and we'll take care of it. By doing that, he could have a couple of his employees broker these services just like he did, and they'd constantly be making $500, $750, or even $1,000 an hour for doing this. And as I said, any business can do this, regardless of what type of product or service you offer. So licensing strategy number 2 is called private labeling. And private labeling is taking your product or service and creating versions of it for other businesses that have their packaging and branding. Now, this can be done with any product or any service. And let me give you an example of how it's done with a product, and in this case it's CBD infused dog treats. So Honey Oil is a small company in San Diego that does about $2.2 million in sales of CBD and THC in the legal cannabis market, because cannabis is legal here in California. So one of the products they manufacture and sell is CBD infused dog treats. Now, they've got a special recipe that, number one, dogs love the flavor of, and number two, it delivers the correct amount of CBD in each biscuit, and it's laboratory tested to do that. So, in addition to creating their own product, they also create the exact same dog treats for other companies, which are bagged and labeled with the other company's branding, like you can see here. Now, the advantage to the companies like that is they don't have to go through all the hassle of having the biscuits created and doing all the lab certification of the correct dosage. They can just buy it from this company, Honey Oil. So here's the real reason why private labeling like this works so well. If you think about it, in any market, it doesn't matter what market it is, you're never going to have more than 3 to 7% market penetration. And most companies have about a 5% market penetration. But when you private label, you get a much deeper share of the market, because you're also selling to your competitors and you're getting a share of your competitors' sales. And those are things you could never get on your own, because everyone just has about a 5% market penetration. So you can end up with a 10 to 15% market penetration by doing this. So, and here's an example. By private labeling these dog treats for a number of pet product companies, this cannabis company brings in $60,000 per month in revenue that's secondary to the revenue from their main business. That's not too shabby for baking dog biscuits. And by the way, this cannabis company learned the private labeling Tollgate strategy from me personally. And that's because the founder of the cannabis company is my son. And that's a picture of us over to the left at the races at the world famous Del Mar racetrack here in California. So strategy number 3 is called profit cloning. And profit cloning is done by taking an idea from a competitor's product or even from your own product and cloning another product using that idea. Now, while it sounds complicated at first, it actually couldn't get much easier. So let me share a couple of examples of exactly how profit cloning works. So the first example is for an outdoor entertaining supplies company, and this is an example of cloning yourself, cloning something you're already doing. So one of my clients sells supplies for outdoor entertaining. And these are things like paper plates, plastic knives and forks, disposable cups. And you can see their site there. It's really pretty simple. It's just a page. There's some pictures of different products, and there's all the categories at the top. Now, what happened is that over the years, they started getting requests from larger organizations, civic organizations, government organizations, and business associations for larger orders, case size orders. So they added those to the site, but that created a bunch of problems. People would order the wrong amounts. People would want a dozen forks. They'd accidentally order a dozen cases, which is something like, 12,000 forks instead of 12. And there was a lot of confusion. There were bad orders. There were refunds. So they had to do something about it. Now, recognizing that they still had a huge demand from businesses and other organizations for other larger orders, what they did was set up a second website where the exact same items are sold, but only by the case. So what they did was they maintained the smaller orders on their original site and set up a second site that sells only by the case. And you can see an example here of these heavyweight disposable pans that are $246 for a case. Now, by doing this, they immediately gain 3 powerful advantages. First, they avoid mixing the case size orders with the smaller individual orders, and that eliminates all of the confusion they were seeing in the questions and the returns coming into their customer service desk. Second, each website can now speak the specific language of its ideal customers, and addressing the specific needs of any market segment in the exact language that appeals best to them is always going to be a winning strategy. And then third, within the first month, this client saw sales growth of 30% just by separating those things out. And that's continued to consistently increase every month, with total sales growth projected to be 70% after the first year. And they're about, I think, 6 months into it, and their sales have grown by about 45%. And most importantly, those additional sales continue month after month for as long as you're in business. Profit cloning example number 2 is for a day trading course. And this is an example of taking an idea from some other company and cloning it for use in your own business. So I have a client who sells a day trading course. That's a course for day trading stocks and bonds. And he was a former engineer, so his whole approach is driven by data analytics, and his copy is also pretty dry because he's an engineer. And at first I thought, well, maybe we should rewrite this. And when he told me he was doing $3 to $4 million a year in sales, I realized, hey, we don't need to rewrite it. And so this very kind of analytical approach appeals to people who want safety and security and don't want any risk in their investments. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who use day trading because they like that risk. They like the thrill of making quick money in a given day. And he was missing out on all of that business. So what we did was have a second site created, and it sells the exact same day trading course. There's no change in name, no change in price or anything. The only difference is that this site is written with more emotional copy that appeals to that make money quick approach. So, as a result of implementing the second website, from the day he implemented it, my client increased his profits by 40%. And that profit increase of 40% has remained consistent for 8 years now. So again, profit cloning is something that can be done with any product or any service. Strategy number 4 is called product specialization. And specialization is a fast way to turn any product into dozens of products. Now, each product is just a small variation of the core product, and it's customized for a specific market. And while this strategy is called product specialization, it can actually be done with any product or any service. So let me give you an example. Applying specialization to a product or service means creating more tightly defined versions targeted to specific industries or customer niches. And the concept is simple, but its application is extremely broad. In fact, the possibilities are practically endless, and they're only limited by your own imagination. So actually, I'm going to show you 2 examples of exactly how this is done. One is for a product, and the second is for a service. So the first example is for specialized information products, and obviously that's the product side. So one of the easiest products to customize is an information product. And a master of specialized information products is my friend Paul Hartunian. Paul had a publicity manual called Power Publicity, and it sold really well on its own, but he'd get questions like, well, the example of the press release there is for a dentist, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so it won't work, or I'm an accountant, so it won't work. So that manual, as I said, sold quite well, and it was priced at $97. But after he got all these requests, Paul decided to create specialized versions of it. And you can see one here on the right. Instead of being called Power Publicity, it's called Power Publicity for Chiropractors. And then he has other versions, Power Publicity for Accountants, Power Publicity for Information Marketers, and so on. Now, this was done simply by creating a customized cover for each market. Now, the majority of the content stayed exactly the same, except for changing the examples that came with the program. So the press release was now customized to each market. Now, which is what I just said here. So by customizing only a small amount of material like this, just the cover and the press release, and maybe a couple paragraphs in the content, each customized version could easily be created in about a half an hour or so. And altogether, Paul used this process, this really simple process, to create over 60 specialized versions of Power Publicity. So how well did it work when he specialized his manual? With this single strategy alone, Paul was able to multiply his profits enormously. And within just a couple years, he used these profits to purchase a $10 million piece of property, where he then built a rescue shelter for animals and retired, because that's his true passion. So example number 2 of specialization is for a service, and this is for specialized dentistry. So this demonstrates how any service can be specialized in order to capture a far greater market share. So years ago, my wife worked on a production team for feature films and television commercials. Now, because it's so expensive to set up and tear down a shooting location, shooting schedules consist of very, very long days, usually 14 hours or more, sometimes 16, 18 hours a day. Now, this kind of schedule makes it almost impossible to access typical services like dry cleaning, doctor's appointments, getting your hair cut, and so on, all kinds of things like that. But one enterprising dentist whose practice was experiencing loads of slow days came up with an ideal solution based on this. He decided to specialize only in after-hours dentistry for people who worked in industries that prevented them from seeing a dentist during normal hours. Now, In Hollywood, there are hundreds of thousands of people who work to make films, television shows, and commercials. And simply by advertising to that specialized market only, this dentist immediately booked his schedule to capacity. In fact, so much so that he needed to hire additional dentists just to fill all the demand. So not only did he make a lot more money, but he never again experienced any slow days. So, and as I said, specialization can be applied to any product or service. So licensing strategy number 5 is called a product development tollgate. Now this tollgate can be used to cut your initial product development cost to zero. And in fact, when you use it properly, your competition actually pays the cost of your product development. Now, if you've ever tried to develop a new product, you know that doing this is both time consuming and can be very expensive. And there's a lot of risk associated with it. So what I recommend you do instead is create a joint venture with a vendor of a similar existing product or service, and you test sales of that before committing time and money to your own development effort. Then if that product sells well, you can move ahead with the development of your own version. So here's an example for a health product. So a client of mine wanted to develop a new product in the healthy living market. That's the market that he normally sells into. But instead of devoting significant resources to this, he's using this product development strategy to first test the market by licensing and selling another company's similar product to his list. And he collects a commission for each sale he makes. Now earlier I told you that some sales that you make with these strategies have a 95% profit margin. This is an example. When you sell another company's product, you're not fulfilling that product, they are. You're just taking orders. So 95% of the commissions you make are pure profit. Now, the more important part though is if this product sells well in his test, he can then pre-sell his improved version of the product to his customers, offering them a nice discount for purchasing in advance. In this way, the sales from this tollgate, along with the pre-production sales of his own product, pay for all his testing and development efforts in advance. In fact, it's likely that he'll already be profitable before he even starts the development of the actual product. And on the other hand, if the sales of the competitor's product are weak, he kills his product development project and he's gained invaluable knowledge with no cost and no risk on his part whatsoever. Licensing strategy number 3 is called the number 6 is called the resource center tollgate. And I have to say, of all the tollgate licensing strategies here, I think that this is my absolute favorite because it's so easy to do and any business can make enormous profits from it. So here's how it works. One of the most valuable assets that you already have is your relationship with the people on your email list. And leveraging that relationship then is a sure way to quickly add a 6-figure profit center to any business. And it doesn't matter whether you sell products or services. So let me give you an example of a resource center of products for buyers of marketing software. So a client of mine who sells marketing software understands that whatever product or service you sell, a high percentage of your customers will also be in the market for other complementary products and services. So rather than investing a tremendous amount of time and money developing those complementary products, my client offers many of them to their list by using a resource center tollgate. To do this, they identified about 10 complementary products and services that have strong appeal to people who buy their software. Then they approach the companies that created those products or services and set up licenses to offer those products to their email list. By doing this and becoming a resource center of those products and services to the people on their list, a number of great advantages kick in immediately. First, They generate significant revenue by sending out just 2 emails a month, each featuring one product in their resource center. Second, you generate a tremendous level of customer loyalty. And here's why. All you have to do is try researching any product or service online, and you'll see that you get thousands of results for any search term. And because of that, it's an absolute nightmare to try to figure out what's good and what's junk. So your customers appreciate it when you eliminate that hassle by recommending products or services you've already researched for them, which then generates a tremendous level of customer loyalty in addition to many more sales. And third, you have no costs or no risk with these offers because the vendors you've set up agreements with, they take all the orders, process all the payments, deliver the products or services, and provide all the customer service. So this is another case where the commissions you get are 95% pure profit because you're not doing all that other work. All you're doing is sending out a couple emails, and then you collect your commissions every month. So how well does this resource center Tollgate work? Well, for this client, the revenue from their resource center is nearly double the revenue from their core products. And don't forget, with their core products, when they collect revenue, they have to deliver the products and customer service. So their profit margin is probably about 35%, whereas with the resource center Tollgate, your profit margin is around 95%. And again, this is a really simple Tollgate that any business can use to quickly increase their revenue by at least 50%, just with this one simple single strategy. Licensing strategy number 7 is called repeating circuit joint ventures. And the beauty of this strategy is that not only do you make more sales, but you also build your email list at the same time. And implementing it, just like all the other Tollgates, is really easy. So the first step is to identify 5 other companies that sell products or services that your customers want, and you're the 6th member of this repeating circuit. Then you set up deals with each of them to promote each other on a repeating basis. So each month, one member's product is promoted to everyone else's list. This sequence continues for 6 months, and then the circuit starts over in the same order. Now, by doing this, your product is promoted to 5 companies' lists 2 times every year. When you do this, you add a lot of new subscribers to your list, and you make a lot of additional sales. Plus, 10 times per year, you're promoting the other members' products to your list and collecting commissions for every sale that's made. And remember, when you do things like this and when you're just collecting commissions but not delivering the product, boom, that's a 95% profit margin. So how well does this repeating circuit joint venture work? Well, using this single strategy alone, one of my clients built a multi-million-dollar consulting firm in less than a year devoted to setting up repeating circuit Tollgates for his clients. And the example I gave you earlier of Roland Frazier, where he made $1.3 million in 6 weeks, that was by using a smaller version of the repeating circuit Tollgate. So it can obviously be very profitable for everyone involved. All right, there's one last important point that I want to make sure you understand. And that is that the value of adding licensing to your business is almost immeasurable. I don't know of anything else that gives you all the advantages you get with licensing. The greatest advantage that you get is that you gain what I call multiple points of entry. And what that means is if you track your customer's journey, there are many points where they could potentially enter your system. Different customers have different needs at different times, but most businesses only allow customers to enter their system at one point in the customer journey. Now, when you do this, you miss out on a ton of sales you could be making. For example, let's say that you sell training on lead generation. While many of your customers may be interested in lead generation, what they may want even more right now is better conversion methods. And others might want to learn how to price their products more effectively, while others still may want page builders or landing page optimization, and on and on. Each customer may be at a different point in their customer journey. Now, if you don't offer those things, then the only real point of entry into your system for your customers is your lead generation training. And you're forcing people to enter your system where you want them to, not at the point of their actual need. And when you do this, not only do you miss out on those sales, but your prospects have to find them somewhere else, which means you may lose them completely. However, when you use licensing to offer many of those products and services to your customers, you now create multiple points of entry into your business, meaning that people can buy at the exact point of need in their journey instead of just the single entry point you currently offer. And this gives you the ability to scale your sales without any development costs and with no risk. And it gives you immense leverage and flexibility to provide a more thorough solution for all your customers' needs at every step in their journey, or at least at many of those steps. It lets you produce those additional sales at a near 100% profit margin, as you've seen, because your vendors or partners in most cases fulfill those products and services and provide most or all of the customer service. And finally, it creates a much higher level of customer engagement and customer loyalty, because you're providing quality solutions that would take your customers a lot of time and energy to research on their own. All right, so that's a complete demo of the 7 Tollgate licensing strategies you can use to quickly turn your assets that you already have into 6-figure profit centers. Now, what we've done in about 40 minutes here together today is a pretty thorough demonstration, and you could use some of this right away in your own business, or you can get my help and get a much deeper training and, most importantly, implementation support. Because what I find is that what people need most, it's easy to understand the concepts, but implementing them is a totally different ball game. So this program, Tollgate Licensing Strategies, gives you a ton of additional support. So what's the outcome if you join the program? Well, we talked about it a little earlier. You'll start each month knowing that you aren't going to get any financial surprises, and that you have a steady, consistent stream of revenue that smooths out any gaps you might encounter, including gaps that you would normally get in a slow season. And being able to quickly turn the assets that you already have into 6-figure profit centers solves a world of problems. As we said earlier, you won't have to worry about making payroll during slow season because you don't have slow seasons anymore. You won't be stuck again not being able to make your tax payments because your cash flow is steady and consistent. You'll put an end to poor credit or vendors threatening you with collection because you'll always be able to pay your bills on time. And finally, you'll have the peace of mind that comes from knowing with absolute certainty that you have a steady, reliable stream of profits coming in every month, even in months that used to be traditionally slow in your industry. So, what exactly do we implement in the program? Well, there's 3 stages to it. First of all, the first stage is called identify, and there we're going to do an asset survey. We're going to determine every asset you have that can be converted to a 6-figure profit center, and this includes known assets, dormant assets, and we'll find some assets that you didn't even know you had, and then we're going to prioritize those assets, which are the best ones to capitalize on right away. Number 2, we're going to match. We're going to match the assets you have to the strategies list. We're going to evaluate those strategies and match the best strategies to your best assets, so you're producing the greatest amount of sales for the least amount of time and effort. And then finally, the third stage is convert. We'll start by implementing a fast turnaround licensing strategy so you can generate cash flow easily within 7 to 14 days of starting the program. Then we're going to set up a really simple system that runs practically on autopilot using one or two of the strategies, and that's going to give you the long-term security and the consistent, steady cash flow that you need and that we talked about. So, how are we going to implement all of this? Well, first of all, there's comprehensive training. We're going to have training that goes over all 7 strategies in complete detail and steps you through how to use each one step by step. Then you get all the marketing documents, all the emails, all the follow-ups, the proposals to partners, how to negotiate the best rates in your licensing deals, and the legal agreements you use for that. And then finally, especially for implementations, you get 3 months of email coaching. Now with that, you can email me anytime you want, 24/7, 7 days a week, every week for 3 months, and I'll answer your questions by email. I'll also compile the answer to those questions by licensing strategy and organize them that way and post them all to the members only website, so there's a complete knowledge base that you can always refer to. So here's the program details. Again, you get comprehensive training and you get 3 months of email coaching, and the enrollment is limited to ensure that you get a high level of support, because I'm answering those questions personally, not my assistant, not some trainee. So I'm going to limit the membership to probably around 20 people, maybe a few more or a few less. And the enrollment fee is a very reasonable $14.97. So here's your next step. You've just seen how these 7 licensing strategies have helped other people just like you quickly turn the assets they already have into new 6-figure profit centers. You saw how one company makes $60,000 every month using private labeling. Another used profit cloning to grow their sales by 40% overnight, and how a solo entrepreneur used product specialization to amass enough wealth to retire, and many more examples. So now it's time for a decision. The way I see it, you have 3 options. Option number 1 is to do nothing and stay exactly where you are right now. And if you're happy with your annual revenue the way it is, then maybe you don't need this. But if you'd like to significantly ramp up your profits, that leaves you with 2 other options. Option number 2 is to go it on your own. Now, a few people have been successful using these licensing strategies based just on what they saw in a demo like this. And you might be able to do that too, but there's a lot of trial and error involved with this method, and you'll probably spend a lot of time and money doing this. But if you're willing to work hard and put in the hours, you might be able to pull it off too. And option number 3, though, is to let me do the heavy lifting for you. I'll give you thorough training in all 7 licensing strategies. I'll give you all the marketing and legal documents you need. They'll be handed to you in ready to go format, in Word format, so you can just cut, paste, and you're ready to go. And the 3 months of email coaching gives you all the personal support you need to be successful. And to me, that's actually the most important component, because as you've seen, the strategies are simple. There are details to them, but anybody can learn it. But implementation is where it gets sticky. So you get 3 months of email coaching where you can email me every day and get the support you need to be successful. Now, with this option, all you need to do is read the material, plug in the marketing documents, and you'll start leveraging these strategies immediately. Then all you do is watch as your licensing projects quickly start generating profits, and often in the first week or 2 of the program, before we've even finished the training. So you don't have to get all the way through it. You're going to start generating profits really quickly. So let me be a little bit blunt here. Options number 1 and 2 are about hoping things will get better. But option number 3 is about doing a few simple tasks to guarantee that things get better. Now, most people will tell you that they want to grow their business and they want to take control of their financial future. But we both know that very few people actually take the step to make it happen. Instead, they just keep hoping. Since you stuck with me for this entire presentation so far, I think you're one of the handful of people I'm looking for. One of the small group of people who will do the few things necessary to significantly increase your sales and profits. Now, if I'm right, then use the link in the next slide to enroll in this program now. So again, here's the enrollment information. Tollgate licensing strategies is 7 ways to turn the assets you already have into 6-figure profit centers. You can enroll right now at this at the link here. Now, obviously, that's not a clickable link, although it is clickable beneath the video. So you can click that, or you can take this link and enter it into a browser, and it'll take you there. Also, if you have any questions at all about licensing, feel free to email me directly at this email address, licensing@licensinglab.com. Those emails go directly to me. They aren't screened by an assistant, and I'll get right back to you with the answers. So, to wrap it all up, I hope you learned a lot today. I hope you got a lot of value that you can implement, and I hope you'll join me. I hope you'll enroll in the program, and I'll meet you in person through our email contact, and I'll be able to help you quickly start turning the assets that you already have into new profit centers. So thanks a lot for watching the video, and as I said, I hope to meet you in the program.